Now let's say that I would like to have an action make a decision for me, where I don't want the action to always be the same. What I'm going to do here is open two images. And what I'd like to do in these two images is I want to end up putting, let's say, a photo credit in the image. But if the image is square, I'd like the photo credit to be centered at the bottom of the image. And if the photo is horizontal, instead, I want it to be in the lower right corner. Well, how do you do that in an action? Because an action just repeats whatever it is you do. Well, here's how you do that. If I go to the Actions panel, first I'd need to make my individual actions. So in this case, I'm not actually going to go through the full process because I don't want to waste too much of your time. But what I'll do in this case is I'm going to have it do antique color if the image is square, and I'm going to have it do that contours tracing if it's not square. And therefore, you'll see how it's done. What you need to do is create two separate actions. One that would be applied if it meets a particular condition, and one that would apply instead if it doesn't meet that condition. So I'm going to create a brand new action here, and I'm going to call it square versus rect, meaning rectangle. I'm going to hit record, and then I'm going to go to the side menu of my Actions panel, and I'm going to choose a choice called Insert Conditional. Now, when I choose Insert Conditional, this top menu gives me all the choices I could use. These are all the questions I can have Photoshop ask about this document to control how it deviates and applies one action versus another. And so right here is a choice, is document is square. So I'm going to have it check if the document is square. And then if it is square, I'm going to have it desaturate the edges or whatever one of these. No, let's do antique color if it's square. And if it's not square, then it's going to do what's down here. Now I could leave that set to none. And therefore, this action called antique color would only apply if the document is square. And if it wasn't square, it would do nothing. Or I could add a separate step in my action right after it that asks another condition. But for now, I'm going to come over here and say that the contours action should be applied if it's not square. I'm going to click OK, and then I'll hit stop. So only thing this action has is an if statement. And that if statement is saying if it's square, play one action, and if it's not, play another. So now I'm going to apply it to this particular document. Now I haven't double checked this document. I'm assuming it's square, but it might not be absolutely square. It could be like almost square. And so I'm not sure if for certain it's going to work, but if it does, it's going to apply the antique color action if it thinks it's square. It did not. And what that means is if I choose undo enough times here, if I go to my image menu and I choose image size, if you look at this, it's not a perfect square. Do you see the two numbers are not identical? So I could crop this image and make it perfectly square. I might do that using the canvas size screen. Canvas size either adds space or takes space away to your image. And here I'll make sure that it's perfectly square. That's going to crop out a little bit of my image. So now it should be exactly square. Now when I hit play, I get my antique color action. If I switch to a different document, this one's rectangular, I hit play on the same action and I don't get the same result. Instead, I get the trace contour action. And so that is a conditional. That's where you can ask a question about the image, and depending on the answer, it will use different settings. And these are the questions that could be analyzed or asked to control which actions applied. So it could be that I have an action that does things to CMYK images. It converts them to RGB. And so I could have this, the first step in an action be an if statement that says, if it's CMYK, then play an action where all it does is convert it to RGB. And if it's not CMYK, it does nothing. It just keeps the action continuing. And all sorts of other things, like when we had things where we're retouching out telephone lines. If I was able to make that as an action, when I talked about retouching, I said it's best if it's done in 16-bit mode. And if you have any other actions that would be best in that mode, the very beginning of the action, put in a step that says insert conditional and say if it's 8-bit, then just have a separate action where all that action does is convert to 16-bit. And then it would be if 8-bit, it runs an action that converts to 16. If else, set it to none. And then just have additional steps in your action, which is what you truly wanted the action to accomplish. So it's only the beginning that would end up checking to see what mode it's in and would convert if needed. So that is called a conditional.